Mr. Dubowski, thank you very much for making the time this morning. So talk to us about how, for example, the figure of 1,000 Rand would be arrived at for motorists in particular who do not have e-tags in their cars.
Well, essentially, the fine in terms of the ARTA Act and its regulations is 500 Rand per gantry. However, that's discounted by 50% to 250 Rand. So if you pass under 2 gantries in each direction, that's 1,000 Rand. As simple as that. That you're going to have to pay within 32 days of the receipt of an infringement notice. However, if you don't pay within 32 days, then it's not 1,000 Rand, it's 2,000 Rand. You don't incur any demerit points for it, deliberately, obviously. Our legislators are not silly enough to have to want to suspend the driving licenses of the largest proportion of road users. However, there comes the interesting part of it, because a professional driver it doesn't incur a fine of 500 Rand. He or she incurs a fine of 750 Rand and 1 demerit point.
What is a professional driver?
A professional driver is a person who drives a vehicle that needs an operator card. So it would be something like a public transport vehicle, a vehicle operating tours and goods transport vehicles. Right. Now, here comes the problem. Okay, implement this, suspend their driving licenses in a single month. It is quite plausible that a professional driver could incur so many demerit points to suspend their driving license for several years. Okay, if you want to cripple the economy, you're going the right way about it. And regrettably, there are other impacts that are going to come about due to the ARTA Act being used to prosecute. And I just want to correct a few people here, because this is nothing new. This has existed in the ARTA Act since 2008. And it has existed in terms of etolls since 2013. Our dear friends at SANRAL have just not used the ARTA Act or the Criminal Procedure Act to prosecute people thus far, because number one, it's expensive, and number two, it's very difficult breaking things into 2 sections, the Criminal Procedure Act and the ARTA Act. But here's the problem. The ARTA Amendment Bill pulls one of the most important teeth out of the ARTA Act, and that is something called a warrant of execution, where if you don't pay your traffic fines, they can come to your house, grab your TV and the couch you're sitting on watching it, and push you out the door with it. That's being repealed. What is being left in place, which is purely unconstitutional in my view, is the enforcement order, which blocks all licensing transactions. So let's ask ourselves if our legislators have thought this one through. Because if you have one enforcement order, then you cannot renew your driving license, your professional driving permit, your license disc, or a permit in terms of road transport legislation. If you have 100 or 1,000 or 5,000 of them, it's no different to having one of them. So what they are, in my view, about to trigger, if this goes through, which I can tell you now, there are serious constitutional hurdles they're going to have to jump over first. But if it were to go through, they are about to trigger one of the biggest tax revolts this country has ever seen, because people will say to themselves, if I've got one enforcement order or 5,000 of them, it makes no difference. I can't renew my license disc. Why should I pay my licensing fees? And that is going to cripple the provinces and the local authorities. As I said, our legislators have legislated themselves right into a corner on this one.
Mr. Dubowski, it boggles the mind about how the president could actually even bring himself to signing this. But question I want to ask of you is, how do these changes that come with the ARTA Act affect what the Minister of Transport, Fikile Mbalula, is about to announce this week in as far as etolls are concerned?
Well, it's been very clear what the intent has been. Look, I'm not a soothsayer, and I'm also not going to put money on it, but electronic toll collection has already made their proposal, to Parliament and to the Minister of Transport, in as much as they say, well, if people buckle under and they get e-tags and they start paying now for etolls, then what they'll do is they will write off historic debt over a period of time. Obviously, that sounds very attractive to a person. If you're going to pay 16 Rand to go under a gantry as opposed to 250 Rand to go under that gantry, then you're going to say to yourself, now hang on, this makes a lot more sense to me. Okay. However, and this is the big however, I think they've underestimated the resolve of people who have actually refused to pay for infrastructure that should be provided to us as part of the taxes and road taxes that we pay.
Howard Dymowski, thank you very much for making the time to talk to us this morning. Quite interesting indeed how all of this is going to play out. He is with the Justice Project South Africa.